Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and welcome to Chasing Legends. Welcome back to Chasing Legends. I'm Wayne Tuttle, once again your host. We tried to do the live this last Friday. We're bringing in Eric Deleel. It's going to be awesome. And then Eric got on a plane and decided to go to Las Vegas. So, yeah, whatever it is. But we will continue this week, and we have another great story for you. Before we get started, subscribe, hit the notification bell, pick up the shirts in the About section, go to our website. One word, Legends of the Superstition Mountains, okay? And .com on the end, and you'll get there, and then the merch and the coffee cups, the hats, the shirts, long sleeve, short sleeve, gray, black, Dutch Hunter Rendezvous, Legends, all that stuff's there. So just go pick that stuff up. We're kind of pushing up getting embroidered hats and some other stuff. Make sure the stuff's cool. That being said and done, I've moved through there. Additionally, something we've been talking about on the lives and been brought up, but I will throw in here. This will be, well, we passed the second anniversary. Cayman Welch went missing over at Weaver's Needle, the Lookout Point. They still have not been able to recover his remains. They do not know where he's at. If you're getting ready to go hiking out there, north of the first water trailhead or south of that area of where the Vista Weaver's Needle Point Lookout is, they say he was traveling kind of southeast. So if you're up in the mountains, you're heading out through First Water. If you're going up to the northeast, heading out in Hackberry, anybody out in that area, keep a lookout and see if you can. It'd be nice to kind of for those family and friends to kind of find out finally what happened to Cayman Welch. And maybe we'll do a story on it. Maybe we'll participate and go out there. It'd be kind of nice to know what they've searched, and rather than go over the same old territories all the time. But I want to put that out there for everybody. It's nice. That being said, I had a very interesting day. Went up to visit a couple of my kids. They're up in Flagstaff in Northern Arizona State University. And we go out, and one of the things we'll always do is do a little antiquing, check out some stuff. So we went to this place. Trevor found a book he liked, and he was talking to me. It was a newer book, it wasn't something that was on cinema or something. And I look right above it, and I find this book. It's one of Ted DeGrazia's limited editions, Toro. It's signed by Ted. One second. It's always like I'm so skilled at this stuff. And it actually has the invitation, one of the receptions for DeGrazia's signings still in it. So it's very cool. It's signed by Ted. Very cool. Nice find. It's usually at that point you go, that was great. It was nice to find something like that. And they had one of the little paintings, that hangable paintings of DeGrazia was kind of a nice one that I picked up. So I was pretty happy. Usually at that point I'm like, hey, that was a pretty good trip, and everybody was kind of getting a little something here or there. There was something when we were looking around. Well, I go to this one place and we walk in, and I walk around and I find really nothing. There was a cool pair of moccasins. I found this pair of moccasins. They were light leather, and they didn't look like they were very worn. They were soft-soled. So they look like they might have been handmade. And the left one was almost in perfect condition. I look at the right one, and I'm getting excited because I'm thinking, they're larger, and I wear size 13, and they look like they'd be a 12 or 13. And then I turn it, and they'd gotten something all over the one shoe, and it just looked like crap. And I was like, it's in the leather, there's nothing. And then the thing that really broke my heart is they had actually, when they made it, had made a sheath into the moccasin, and it had a handmade knife stuck down in it. So I was so tempted. If there was a way I could have recovered or actually fixed that, I would have actually picked up those moccasins as well, because they were very cool looking. But we continued on. There was nothing really else. I'm looking. Trevor saw some old cameras and stuff. And then I saw this. I've wanted one of these for the rendezvous. I'm not going to ring it because probably wouldn't go over well audio-wise here. But I saw it sitting there, and I thought, wow, I've been looking for one of those for at the rendezvous or something. And when we're out camping and stuff, because you can hear those things ring forever. And I was like, that would be cool. And I thought, well, let's see if there's anything else. So I start going through, and I'm looking down, and there's some bookshelves. And I'm looking down the bookshelves, and there's nothing. And that's usually what happens, you know. It's just a mix of all kinds of books. And I see this book, and I go, oh, Center's Gold, Helen Corbin. And I'm like, oh, okay, like $5. Well, you know, the book originally was probably about 15 or 20. I don't think it's in print anymore. I thought that's cool. Nice copy of Helen's book. I think I have one copy. Okay, I got a new copy. Okay, and this one's really excellent condition, so I thought that's nice. I'll have a really good copy because sometimes the bindings on these don't hold up. So I'm thinking, hey, that's kind of a win. But I don't know. Maybe I get this and I get that. I don't know. So I was still kind of in the mode. And I look over 2 books, and I see this. And it's one of the first editions, Superstition Mountain, Tom Collenborn, Ride Through Time. It's kind of like threw me off. I was like, wow, it's a hardcover. I have one, or 2, but I wanted to get another one. So I was like, okay, well, shit, that's pretty good. And I think this was like $8, and I was like, well, that's a good deal, man. You can't beat that. So now I'm thinking maybe I will get the triangle in those 2 books, and I look at the bookshelf, a couple more books over. Kid you not. The Killer Mountains, the first edition, or no, this is the 3rd or 4th printing, because the book came out probably about 65, 66, and this is probably 68 or 69. But it's a hard copy of Killer Mountains. Kind of like, oh, that's the first Dutch hunting book I read. And I thought, that's cool, because I do have my original, but now I have another one, and this one was almost in near perfect condition. And I was like, man, how lucky can you get? So I start looking down the bookcase again, and I get to the end of that one, and I go down to the next one, and the first book I see, and Trevor's nowhere nearby me. I'm literally like bubbly now, and I find Robert Blair's Tales of the Superstition hardcover, and I have a soft cover version of this. I've had my copy for many, many years. Almost impossible to find these, but yeah, I got a hardcover of Robert Blair's book. So I was like, dang, man. That's sweet. Some Dutch hunter gave up his library. So I'm kind of like thinking, well, I wonder if there's anything else. And I went over 4, 5, 10 books, nothing. And I see this tan book, and I'm just like, and it's kind of tall, and it's kind of a rectangular shape, kind of oddball. And I looked at it, and I could see by the spine. And it's a copy of Thunder God's Gold, Barry Storm. It's not only a copy of Barry Storm's Thunder God's Gold, it's the first edition that has the notes of authenticity in it, which is the one you really want to get if you're getting one. And it has all the notes of authenticity in the back, which was cool. And I looked at it, and I definitely wanted to make sure it was a first edition, and I opened up the thing, and the first thing I noticed, well, not the first, yeah, the first thing I noticed, Barry Storm's autograph. And I'm like, wow, an autographed copy of Thunder God's Gold. And that was really it. But at that point, where I wasn't even sure if, if I was going to pick up the iron, Trevor comes around the corner, and I'm holding this bunch of books in my arm now. And I'm just like, shh, dude. It's like the greatest haul of books I've probably ever done just walking into a place. Now, all these books I've read before, and I've had copies, but to find pristine mint copies like these in some place, and they were all like $5, $8 a piece, just blew my mind, especially the Barry Storm, the Thunder God's Gold. Finding a copy of that like that, signed by Barry Storm, a first edition, that just was kind of too much. So very, very cool. Just to tell you, when you're, when other people are impatient and going back out to sit in the truck, just hang through, run your finger down. Don't, people will take and put things, but things are not always in place, but sometimes you just start running into one thing after the other. And yes, I covered every shelf after that to make sure there was nothing else missing, because you never know. Could have been a Lost Dutchman Mine signed by Sims Healy or something like that sitting there. So that was very, very cool. And I did get obviously the triangle, because once I figured if I'm finding that cache of books, that means I'm supposed to pick up the triangle too. So, because that was a victory ring. So that's very cool, but that's not what today's video is really about. It's not about Cayman Welch, even though we hope they find him. It's not about me finding a bunch of these really cool super books that one of you could have if you would have been at that antique store and been like totally shocked that you found them. No. This one we're going to talk about, I'm sure a lot of people know the story vaguely. People know the story. It's Curtis Merworth and two friends of his, partners, that came down from Utah and went missing in the mountains. Now, I've wanted to tell the story, and I kind of will allude to it now and then. And recently, good friends, Terry Carter, and another individual that everyone knows, Salvador Deleel, they put up a video of Salvador talking about the guys from Utah. And Salvador, I don't know where he was going, but went into something about the mothership and beaming them up and some other things. And I think Sal was very entertaining, but I don't know what he was talking about. And Sal and I have talked about this subject before, so I was kind of surprised, but I don't know if he was just being entertaining in a weird kind of storyteller mode and all, and I love Sal, but I just didn't understand, but I wanted to kind of put the story out there. So go check out Terry's, definitely go check it out, and check out Sal, because Sal did a great job. I mean, it's fun to listen to. Once you've heard the story, you can go and listen to Sal's version of the story. But the story is basically Curtis Merworth was looking for Lost Dutchman Mine, looking for treasure. I don't know if he'd been out prior to the year before he went missing, but the year before he goes missing, he comes out to the Superstitions. He goes back in the mountains. He gets lost, gets turned around, doesn't know his way out. They end up finding him. He ends up calling on his cell phone and making his way out about Apache Trail somewhere. But he ends up kind of basically making it out of the mountains, totally dehydrated. Took him a few days to get fluids back up and all. But they found him, but he got completely lost. He probably could have died in the mountains, but he came out. And there was a big search and rescue, but he had a cell phone. So he was able to call and let them know where he was, and they were able to kind of go down and get him. Which leads to a funny story. There was a time Clay Worst broke down on the side of the road. Or, no, I think it was on Tortilla Road. And he walked back out to Apache Trail. And cars were going by and nobody would pick him up. You have this elderly gentleman who has a broken down car and is dehydrating. He said, and nobody would. I don't know if he would have had the energy to hike back to Tortilla Flat. We could have lost Clay over that. And then there was one motorist, a lady, that did pull over and made sure she got Clay home and everything. So I don't remember her name. I don't know if he ever said it, but it's thank you if she ever watches any of this stuff. But the thing is, Merworth got lucky. But he decided he kind of figured it out later again, where he'd gone wrong. So he got some friends. One of them was Malcolm Meeks, and the other one's Ardeen Charles. Now, their ages are given different in different articles. I know Merworth's like 47, 48, 49. So he's in that age group and so forth. Meeks was listed somewhere between late 40s and 51. And the other gentleman was 66, but then when he first went missing, he was 62. So he got 4 years older while he was in the mountains for a week or two. So, and that's on the news media. So when you read the articles, they were basically, two of them were basically in their 40s, it appears, and one of them was in his 60s. The other two gentlemen had health problems. One of them had trouble walking, a hip or knee problem or something with walking, couldn't sustain long periods of walking or something, they said. And the other gentleman had a bad heart, and they said basically Curtis Merworth wasn't in great health either. Well, they decided to make their trip in July, so they came out right around the 1st of July. They drove down here. Their plan is they're going to go in and out of the mountains, but they're going to basically stay at a motel in town or camp in their car. They brought sleeping bags and stuff, but they're leaving all that stuff in the car, so they're going to hike in, go to the area they're looking at, hike back out to the car each day. Not a great idea, but okay, it depends, I guess, where you're going. But, I mean, that's a lot to even say if you were just going to Weaver's Needle in and out all day. That would take you all day to get there and back each day. So how much searching are you really doing? But that's their plan. On the way through, Louis Ruiz, who we lost recently from the Bluebird, Louis said the guys came in, and they said, hey, and, Curtis Merworth said, do you remember me? And he said, yeah, you're the guy who got lost, and they had to rescue you. And they bought a map or something from him. There was a old topo or treasure map of some sort he had hanging up above. They asked if he had any copies of that still, and he said, yeah. And they bought one of those. And he said he didn't feel good about it. He told them they shouldn't be going in the mountains. It was July. That was one of those hottest Julys for some time. It was probably up in the 105, 108 range, up to the 110, 112s. So, and when that period of time hits, just think of this. The average temperature is usually 98, 99 degrees, which means the lows get into the like upper 80s. But just think if you had to sustain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, nothing but 99-degree weather. Your body just has a hard time cooling off. But they decide to go in. So they go down to Lost Dutchman State Park, check in there. It's thought maybe they were going to sleep in the car or camp out by there, even though they didn't have a tent, but then maybe they're going to sleep in the car. And I don't know why they need sleeping bags because it's so freaking hot. They could have just slept on, you know. But that was the plan. They packed up their stuff and they went in the mountains. They were supposed to be home, I think, by the 11th or 12th or 13th, but by July 10th, nobody had heard from them. For some reason, Curtis Merworth did not take a cell phone this time. They never heard from them from a payphone any place that they were okay, that they'd been in and out of the mountains. So someone contacted the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department, and they went in and they found the car at Lost Dutchman State Park. It had been sitting there. They found out how long it had been basically in there. Nobody had seen anybody around, so they began a search. They didn't even know where to search. Most of the search was staged off down at First Water at the trailhead. They had a trailer set down there. They spent a lot of time. There was a lot of manpower. There were helicopters. There were men on horseback. There were men hiking in the mountains. There were search dogs, cadaver dogs, everything. And they were hitting it hard. Now, one thing they did find in the car were a couple maps. They're just hand-sketched maps. They're not treasure maps. They're kind of like they would have, one had arrows on it and said, not this way, that way, not this way, don't go this way, go that. It was hard to really understand what you're looking at. Kind of fortunate in the end is they made sure all of us got copies of those. So Greg Davis, I'm pretty sure Clay Worst, Tom Collenborn, everybody went down there. I went down and talked to them. They showed up me the material. They were showing everyone the material, see if anybody could have an idea, had contact with any of them, if there was something we could lend to them to find these guys. And none of us had a clue. We had no idea. Had never heard of them. Didn't know where to even kind of go from where they were staging, the whole plan, everything's. And then they left their maps in the car, so they must have traced onto the map that they took with them, the one they bought from Louis. So they're in the mountains. We're there. I was there. They were bringing helicopters in, but it was getting way too hot for the guys on horses, way too hot for the dogs searching, because they knew they were further back in the mountains. So they were going in and out, and I was there talking to them. And my basic concept was at the time, because it was so hot, was I went down and I wasn't going to volunteer for anything, because you're risking yourself. You're risking the horses, the dogs. It's just, they're probably at that point 5, 6, 7 days late. And you're like, it's just so hot, and just the temperature, everything's wet. You're like, if they're not out of the mountains and we just don't know it, there's not much we can do at that point. But they kept searching for a little while, and then they finally had to call off, because it's a waste of resources, and it's more likely a hiker or someone else might run into something. So time went by, and then Rick Gwynn, our good friend who passed away last year, Rick Gwynn comes into the rendezvous, and me and him are sitting there talking. And Rick was asking me, and this is the story I kind of know, but Rick was talking to me, and he asked about all that stuff when we were talking, and said we really could make heads or tails of a lot of it. So I had the maps, copies of the maps that they had in their car and stuff, and I gave a couple to Rick and talked to him and told him where I knew some of the search area had been. Hadn't been back in that, any areas. I said, Rick, I don't even know kind of where to go. I was thinking more Barkley Basin down in that area. I wasn't sure, it was really difficult, and they were coming in Lost Dutchman. I was like, Rick, I really don't know. So Rick was like, okay, all this. And so Rick was getting ready for hip surgery here shortly. And before he did, he wanted to take a hike out. And Rick told me later that it kind of nagged at him, and he kind of thought he knew where this was. And I guess he couldn't get anybody to go with him, or just stubborn as Rick was, he just decided, I'll go by myself. So Rick went in the mountains. He went up and about by Yellow Peak. And he was coming down what is kind of a basalt type rock formation. It looks like a little river stream where it's all basalt rock piled up. Not really any vegetation. It looks like a weird trail, but it's a difficult place to walk. And there's, you know, plants and stuff and little bushes and trees on either side. But he comes down through there, and he comes upon these bodies, 2 bodies. They're skeletal remains. There was a parasol, and there was, I think there was a water jug or something sitting there. There was a lantern or something that it was in the on position. And there was just a few kind of items. He said it smelled horrible, and that usually happens as the bodies decompose into the ground and stuff. It takes a long time. Now you have to remember it's only been about 5 months. Or, well, yeah, about 5 months. 5 getting close to 6 months. But they're just basically skeletal remains. Rick said he could barely take it, the smell and everything, and get it out of his mouth. He said he checked, I think, the wallet of one gentleman and saw it was, I think it was Meeks, and he realized he'd found 2 of the bodies. He didn't see any sign of the other one. Rick worked his way down. He took pictures, worked his way down. Once he got down in the washes, ravines down below, he was starting to head out, and I don't know which route he took, but he might have went back and then tried to either go up through Barkley Basin, or maybe goes up up on Black Mesa. But Rick realized he couldn't make it out, said he basically had to camp and sleep for the night because of his hip and the pain, come out the next morning. So Rick contacts the sheriff's department. Sheriff's department goes, and they start to go look for it, the bodies. Rick went up with them in the helicopter, had a heck of a time finding them. He said he figured the white bleached skeletons, because they're pretty bleached white, and some of the color, you would have been able to pick it from the air, but he said until they got down real low, it just blended in. He said those guys could have searched forever, and until I told them specifically, they kept dropping down, almost on it. You couldn't tell they were there. So they found and recovered those 2 bodies. They went out to recover them. Rick said when he found them, one of the skulls had 2 holes in it like someone had shot someone, and the other one had ribs and bones protruding like someone had shot him in the back or something. There's no firearm, I don't think, recovered with anybody involved in this. So that was Rick's thoughts. They called it an accidental death. All 3 of them had some health problems. They're in their late 40s up into about 60 or late 50s. They said they shouldn't have been out there 110 degrees. That's all easy to believe. No problem with that. The 3rd gentleman, who was Curtis Merworth, they finally found him. He had been going down the wash, and they said it was kind of, I don't know, because what he was trying to do, but I guess he was going north, I think they said, instead of going south where he could have worked his way out. He was probably about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, probably 2 hours from first water. But I think he might have been heading for Lost Dutchman. But anyways, they said he was kind of going the wrong direction when they found him. He had fallen forward and busted his head or something on a rock or something in a wash. Now, Salvador says Will, Rick's son, found him, but then I heard Will told me he didn't find him, and then someone else said that wasn't who found him, and it was just kind of like, it got kind of murky. I ended up with 3 or 4 different names. So Sal said it was Will. That's fine if that's who it was. I'm not taking anything away from it, but then I got several different stories. So Rick said all that, and then when Rick came into town, basically what he did was he got into town, he uploaded his camera, turned the photos over, the card or whatever, his camera, over to the sheriff's department, and made sure they recovered the bodies. Whoever found the 3rd body, they went out and they recovered that body and whatnot. Now, someone else went out and went to look at the scene. Now, I know I ran into Tom Collenborn and Jesse Feldman. They went out, but this wasn't them. But they went out there, me and Randy Wright. I was waiting on Randy Wright, and Tom and Jesse came in the mountains while I was in, and we crossed paths. They were heading for Yellow Peak. So we all talked, and wasn't thinking much of it. And but later someone else went back in and said a lot of the remains from, I think it was Merworth, were still there, and they picked up a lot of it and put it in a backpack, old backpack, and then they hiked it out, called the sheriff, said it's on the porch, come get it. That's, you guys should have collected all the remains. You shouldn't have left all that out there in the wash. And that should be that. I think the family were thankful that they were all found and recovered. The whole thing kind of just got hushed down. Rick got on World's Greatest Mysteries, a couple shows. Rick made a couple shows and stuff, and that was kind of it. Except a couple things. One thing was, everything bad that happened in Rick's life, I would say literally tragic, happened after that. He supposedly found those bodies. Everything involved in that, and then his trailer burned down. He lost almost all his possessions. He lost all his photographs, all the stuff he'd had over the years and stuff. His life just kept going into an upheaval. He started having a series of heart attacks and strokes. He couldn't keep his health together. He had just runs of bad luck, one thing after another. And we would only occasionally kind of half kid, but we kind of seriously like, Rick, man, you need to find somebody to fix this because something's wrong up there. I've heard other people that have went up there that they've had a little bit of run of bad luck. I've never really went up there. I went up kind of in the area down into the wash. I just was checking out the area just to kind of work out of like how long would have it taken them and this and that in the area. Now, that's one story. Then there's a story that's been circulating for a few years now that Rick wasn't the person that found it. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't, but there's someone who's been out there, and then the story took hold, and we all heard about it, and it was like trying to confirm a ghost, because somebody would say, well, so-and-so knows about that. Okay, well, what do you know about that? And they say, oh, well, you know what? If I knew something about that, I really don't feel like I'm in a position where I want to talk about it. Huh. So the idea is someone else was working up in that area, came across the bodies. Now, I've heard two versions. One is came across them, they were dead. Basically came out. They said Curtis Merworth had a bunch of cash on him. He probably got the cash from the other guys to go get help, and that was what it was, that he was going for help, and he died. Rick said to the very end that the other two guys were shot up there, and Merworth was shot down in the wash as he was fleeing. They went after him and shot him. I heard that the person that found them ran across them and shot them, killed the two. That Merworth ran, and then he basically ran him down and killed him. Then decided needed the bodies to be found, since there was no, other than the foul play of murdering them, there was nothing else wrong. I don't know if I buy that, but Rick was very adamant that they'd been shot. It's just such a curious story, because there's always something new that kind of comes up, and you're like, well, why are there these little mysteries out there? Why is this? And it's as people, Rick passed away, and then suddenly there's this thing, well, that was kind of because of this and this and that. And people started whispering names, and I thought, well, it's not fair to someone that may have had nothing to do with it. I understand if someone came across the body and said, hey, I located this. Hey, Rick, why don't you do this? But Rick always said that he had been up there and done this. Now, he was on 2 walking sticks, and he would have had to climb up there. That basalt rock, those guys, when they were walking, the way they were found, it was like they were sitting on the rocks in the middle of the open, in the most uncomfortable place to sit down, where there's no shelter from the sun. Might have been nighttime, but they were just sitting there on those rocks, like they were just sitting there, taking a break, and something happened and they both keeled over. Good possibility, one of them, the one who couldn't walk any further. I'm going to stay with him. I'm not doing very good. Here, take most of the water, take some cash, go get us some help, get back as soon as you can. It only took us, 3-4 hours to get in here, so in about 3, 4, 5 hours, you should be able to make it out. You should have someone here within 7 or 8 hours or quicker. We need help bad. And that could have been what happened. Could have been someone ran across them, and there was an altercation of some sort. That's been known to happen. It's kind of a general mystery that we're never going to have solved. I was going to post in this the photographs, because I have the copies of the photographs of the bodies. I just don't know how to do it. I don't want the family to I don't know if that's something, it's just not in good taste. They are very disturbing photos. because they're not completely like, it's not like black and white photos of Adolf Ruth from 70, 80 years ago, or longer than that. It would be about 90 years ago. These were photos of someone roughly just over 10 years ago. They're in color. They're very graphic. So I just really kind of felt it was in the best interest of everyone. It's not saying you guys are faint-hearted and stuff. I just thought in the sense of good taste not to post those. I'm not going to probably put them in the archives. I will put like the maps in the archives because that'll be something that's fine. I don't think anybody has a problem with sharing that, what they drew and all that, and matching it. Because once you saw the maps and you knew where they were found, it made sense more. Not a great sense, but it made sense. But the photographs, there's a number of people want to see them. I've taken and shared them with a couple people. But I just think it's not the kind of thing. There's families out there, and when they're, they end up on the internet with these treasured groups and stuff, and they end on Facebook, and sometimes they see somebody's, they search their loved one's name, and then something like that would come up, a post that somebody's sharing a photograph, and I'm like, I don't think they've ever appeared on the internet. I don't even know if we're supposed to have those, to be honest. But they've kind of made their way around everybody. If you ever want to convince someone not to go in the summertime, it's a great photograph to show somebody and say, this is what happens. If you're not from Arizona, if you're not normally hiking in the desert during the summer in Arizona in the 110s, which most people shouldn't be to begin with, even if you're the best hiker there, just don't. But that's the story of the three guys from Utah. So there's a lot of little side lanes kind of going on that story. Maybe that's where Salvador was kind of like tripping around on and the mothership came in. I did not know about the mothership. That's the first time I heard about the mothership coming in and doing that. But I hope everybody enjoyed that. Merwalt, Ardeen, and Charles, it's just, or Meeks. But it's good to kind of have that story out there because we're coming to the end of the summer. But at the same time, they were July. Came in Welch, disappeared in August. A lot of this stuff happens in July, August, and even in September. It's still hot. So everybody stay safe, stay hydrated. Probably stay out of the mountains for another month and a half, 2 months. Come out to the rendezvous in November. Kind of feel it starting to cool off and stuff. And that's when we should all go. So lessons learned, heed the warnings. We want to see you come back time and time again. All right, so until we see you, if you come on out to the November rendezvous on the, I believe it's 4th, 5th, 6th. Yes, I believe it's the 4th, 5th, 6th of November at the Don's Camp, and we'll do a little video on that and keep starting throwing that in. Jesse Feldman, our guest speaker, our main speaker on Saturday night. We usually do that around sunset, but stay with us, stick with us. Hope you enjoyed this. You got any questions, I will answer what I can or what I wish to answer in good taste. Thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of the week. Take care, and remember, I'm Wayne Tuttle. You're not. And this was Chasing Legends.